Hey everybody, it's Elias Mastroyanis here, and this is the Distillery Nation Podcast, where insightful business advice collide with craft distillery interviews. Look no further, as you found the podcast you need to listen for craft distilling.
Hello and welcome to episode 03 of the Distillery Nation Podcast. Today's guest is Jason O'Donnell. Jason is the co-owner and distiller of Tualatin Valley Distilling, located in Hillsboro, Oregon, and the mind behind the Oregon single malt whiskey. Jason, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Elias. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining. Well, before we jump into the questions, I would like to share the story of how we met. I think it's going to be useful for our audience too, and pretty funny as well. So, I was actually, for my own distillery, I was looking at alternative heating because I do have a pot still, and was looking specifically for a hot plate. And started doing research, and I found some pictures online about a distillery in Oregon that was using this hot plate. And I'm like, oh my God, this is it. Somebody else is using it, I better contact them. So I actually sent an email to Jason, and, I remember you replied really quickly, and you kind of told me, don't do this, stay away from this hot plate. That's been a nightmare for me. And that actually saved me a lot of time and a lot of money. So, Jason, I really appreciate the honesty.
Absolutely.
And that actually, that was awesome. So without out of the way, can you tell us a little bit about your personal life and fill in any blanks that I missed?
Sure. So I actually come to the industry by the way of consumerism. So I started off really as a consumer of whiskeys. Started back in 1999 as one of the Three Drunken Celts, which is my whiskey tastings group that's based out of a medieval reenactment organization called the Society of the Creative Anachronism. We started this group back in 99 as a way to just learn about whiskeys. Specifically at that time, to learn about single malt whiskeys. And we figured what better way to do it than to throw a party and start drinking them. You learn by imbibing, and over the course of the next decade and a half, we really kind of figured out what we like, what we don't like, and have been having fun with it ever since. So from the consumer side, that's kind of really where I started. And then, of course, moved into the production side in end of 2012 is when we started the company. Of course, actually got our production license in the end of 2013. So it took a little while there, but made that transition. And, of course, haven't moved away from the consumer side of whiskeys at all. I probably do more market research now than I ever have before. So,
yeah, excellent. Well, what kind of made you? Can you tell us a little bit about the actual distillery origin? Like, what made you decide to going from the consumer to just saying I'm gonna make this as a full-time job, or putting my money into it and going all in?
Absolutely.
What made you do this?
It really came down to the realization that I could. I had started off, like I said, from the consumer side, going to whiskey tastings. When I moved into Oregon, I associated myself with PDX Whiskey, which is a whiskey tasting group, and actually discovered that one of my longtime friends from Southern California had actually moved to Oregon a few years earlier, and I ended up landing about 2 miles away from him. We share a love of good whiskeys, and we started attending PDX Whiskey tasting events here locally. It was really through that, kind of starting off afresh in a new area with a new focus, and started talking about the dream of possibly making our own whiskey. At the same time, I became friends with Ted Pappas of Big Bottom Distilling out in Hillsboro, Oregon as well. And he and I started chatting during the days I'd volunteer on his bottling line, really kind of poking him for answers to more industry-specific questions than I had access to at the time. Through just talking with him, we discovered that it wasn't as great of an undertaking as we may have thought at one time. Not to diminish the size of the undertaking at all, because it is substantial. But
there's a lot of components that go into it. Yeah.
As a craft distiller, you can get into it without having to immediately start up as a distillery the size of a Glenfiddich or even a Bruichladdich. We could start it for pennies on the dollar in comparison and really make a go of it. So that really kind of is how we started out, had that kind of light bulb moment as we started running numbers. And my business partner, Corey Bowers, kept coming back to me on the spreadsheet and saying, hey, there's no red flags here. We, with our investment, we're looking good at the size that we want to be at the start. We think we can make a go of it. So it really was that just quick light bulb moment of, wow, I think I really could do this.
Excellent. Yeah. And then running the numbers, which is also important as well. And
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the name of the distillery, because it kind of has a unique name? So I want to hear a little bit of the story behind it.
It does, and in fact, we actually changed our name about a year into company formation, and that was because we had started off with a name that we later found was protected under trademark. Albeit a regional trademark, but one that had been a trademark that had been enforced previously with a different brewery. So upon that discovery, we decided to move over and rename as quickly as we could before we had real money invested in the brand.
Yeah.
So during that conversation about the renaming, we really wanted to focus on the locale, our particular region, our particular area, really tie ourselves to the land, so to speak, and identify with that micro region. So the Tualatin Valley is actually a small portion at the north tip of the Willamette Valley in Oregon. And we wanted to make sure that as a company, we stayed close to our roots and opted for a company name that really reflects that.
Excellent.
With the idea, of course, that we can kind of branch out and have a lot more fun as time progresses with bottling names.
Yeah. And then did you guys started with the single malt whiskey? Was that the flagship product?
That really was the genesis of the company. When my business partner and I got together, it really was the focus on making an American whiskey with 100% malted barley, which at the time, I think we'd only found one or two products on the market, not even widespread on the market, just locally on the market, as hard as we could look, that actually were producing whiskeys with 100% malted barley. We wanted to really kind of take the Scotch tradition, the Scotch ideals, and bring them over into the U.S. and make a go of it and create an American whiskey for a Scotch palate.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, Jason, can you take us to your worst distillery moment from, either, the startup phase or just, putting the money into? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. There's a few in contention for worst moment, of course. One of them being the realization that we had to rename. Really what I focused on as probably the worst moment up to this point was a call I received from the TTB after months of having our paperwork submitted, waiting on them to come back with any of their asks. Having gone around with them a few times on some of the asks and getting some things updated and changed, of course. It was probably, I want to say it was the first week in December of 2012, and I got a call from the TTB that started out with the words, "I should have caught this earlier."
Uh-oh.
And my heart sank, because at that point we had a good portion of our investment already sunk into a lot of our equipment, the space, of course.
Yep.
It really had been since May, so quite a few months of really pouring our all into building up just to get our licensing. Those words at the beginning really kind of stuck with me. It turns out that it was a newer agent at the time who hadn't done an alternating proprietorship approval at that point. And so there were a lot of really small details that we had to make sure that we're in line in order to get our approvals. And one of the big details was a bit of a red flag at one point by misreading some of the regulations. We had addressed those red flags way at the beginning as we were talking about the alternating proprietorship. Both Ted Pappas of Big Bottom Distilling and I wanted to make sure that as we submitted, we did everything correctly. So we had a lot of fact-finding missions at the beginning, which is, of course, why that particular phone call was so heart-wrenching to begin with.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, how long total it took to get approved by the TTB?
Well, luckily, after that initial phone call in the first week of December, like I said, we submitted our paperwork in May. After that initial phone call, there was one other phone call. I believe it was the same day, where we clarified a lot of the issues that were found at that point. And within that week, we were approved.
Awesome.
Got our production license. I believe it was December 12th of 2013. So really kind of went quick once we got over that last major hurdle, which turned out wasn't that big of a hurdle to begin with.
Excellent. That's good news. Can you tell us a little bit about the aha moment about, either, again, you talked a little bit, but what made you and your partner kind of decide on this whole journey? And then, what made you guys focus on just the single malt? Was it just, as you said, your love about whiskeys, or you didn't see the actual product on the market? What actually made you start on this journey?
There wasn't really that aha moment at the beginning. We definitely kind of slowly came into it from the consumer side, looking for product that met our palates but was locally made. So definitely looking at the lack of 100% malted barley whiskeys on the local market was probably one of the major aha moments, if you will. Just knowing that there was demand for it because we wanted it, and the products weren't there to suit our palates, which kind of led us down the path of, well, we just have to make it ourselves.
Yeah, that's actually a good thing to do, because that tells you right away that there's demand. If you're looking for something, then it's not there. So
absolutely.
And then I was reading on your website as well that you guys actually do everything from scratch, meaning you guys make the mash, you ferment it, you distill it, and you bottle it, right? All at one location. So
we do, and that is one thing that I think sets us apart from a lot of other larger distilleries that are purchasing their distillate from larger conglomerates, which is not to say that that's a bad business model. It absolutely works for a lot of distilleries, and it's not to say that they're making a poor quality product, because they're not. It sells well and it tastes good. I can't condemn them for doing that, especially since my host in my tenant-host relationship as an alternating proprietorship started out doing independent bottling of purchased spirits. He was very open and clear about that, and it's one of the things I love about Ted, is that he is able to stand up and say, look, this is what I'm doing, and make no bones about it. Because of what Ted was doing, we wanted to make sure that we set ourselves apart. We were a little bit different in that. So we opted to go and do things the hard way. Start by milling the grain and brewing up our distiller's wash, distiller's mash, going from the distiller's beer into fermentation, and then, of course, into beer strips and final spirit distillation as well. Really taking it from the grain to the bottle in the same space. It is one of the things that really kind of sets us apart from a lot of the other distilleries that don't do that.
So, out of curiosity, how big is the distillery space? Because you might require quite a bit of space to be able to do this whole process, right?
Kind of. And I say that because we are in an alternating proprietorship, which means we sublet space from our host. We sublet about 263 square feet. Not a lot of space at all.
Yeah.
But we do share a bottling line, which opens up probably another 1,300 square feet to us. We are in two separate units of an industrial complex, which gives us, I think, a total of 3,000 square feet in those two units, and then have a third unit as the rick house, which adds another 1,500 square feet for us as well. We don't use all of that, but we do have the capability to move around as we need to.
As needed, yeah.
So smaller stills, we do all of our mashing, all of our fermentation, and all of our distillation in that 263 square feet.
Wow.
So I think we might be the smallest legal distillery in Oregon at this point.
It is really impressive, I must say.
Not only by square footage, but by still size and volume output as well.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Jason, let's dive into the distillery round. So, what is your biggest strength as a distiller?
That's a great question. I honestly sat down with the list of questions here and kind of gave it a good pondering. And I think really my biggest strength as a distiller is simply my desire to innovate, to bring new flavors to the market, to look beyond what the current trends are and try and scratch out my own trends, really do things that are different and new, or a different and new take on an old idea.
Excellent. What is your biggest weakness as a distiller?
This is one I'm kind of embarrassed about. I think it's probably the fact that I dropped out of high school chemistry in the first semester to pick up beginning guitar.
Nice.
In hindsight, I shouldn't have done that. I think the lack of formal training in chemistry is probably my biggest weakness here, but luckily I have some great resources at my disposal and a lifelong desire to learn. So that kind of has balanced out those weaknesses. But I probably shouldn't have dropped high school chemistry.
All right. What is the one thing that has you most excited right now?
You know, you caught me at a really good time, because right now I am really excited about our latest product release, which, you figured I'd have to get a plug in here somewhere for that.
No. Go ahead. We want to hear.
Yeah, we just released in late June a product called Morwood's Huskaba, which is a farmhouse spirit. It's an historic revival spirit. Mm-hmm. We took a recipe that was documented in 1838 by Samuel Morwood, which spoke to production methods and specifically ingredients that would have been utilized prior to the 1650s generally, and decided that we wanted to take this old product and make it new again. It's a product that we haven't seen on the market since, I'm going to guesstimate, probably the 1700s. Wow. I'm sure it was being made after 1650, even though the recipe was prior to that, but it really is kind of the great grandfather to modern day whiskeys. It doesn't bear resemblance to modern day whiskeys in sight, smell, or taste, or even really production method, but it is where modern whiskeys came from in their evolution. So we really wanted to bring that back to market as we were doing the research for some of our whiskey recipes, to see if we could document what we were doing and how we were doing it, and stumbled upon this one. It's got an amazing flavor. It uses saffron at the end of the distillation process, which gives it an otherworldly yellow color and some just amazing depth of flavor to it. So you can definitely tell I'm excited about that one.
Yeah. Does it start with the same base? I was just curious.
So it actually starts off with proof spirits and spices and botanicals. So it's actually built production-wise very much like a gin. Mm-hmm. It looks a little bit like a chartreuse and kind of sort of tastes a little like an absinthe, but really kind of stands alone on its own. Only has nods to each of those other styles of product.
So very light.
It is.
Kind of touches a little bit of everybody.
Yeah. Really kind of deep, warm fall spice complexity on the front, but it finishes beautifully clean. and actually makes a really interesting cocktail that if you were to build a gin and tonic with it, just replacing the gin with more woods whiskaba, the resulting cocktail is beautifully crisp and light, but with some depth and complexity to it that is well beyond what a typical gin would give you.
Excellent. Well, that follows perfect in our next question, which is what's your favorite drink right now?
Indeed, it does. And I have to say the anachronism is the cocktail name I came up with for More Woods Whiskaba, simply because tonic and lime wouldn't have been used in the British Isles during the 1650s or prior. So it is a bit of an anachronistic cocktail. Beyond that, I'm a Manhattan guy. I absolutely adore my Manhattan, and in fact, I have one on my desk as we're talking tonight. So
excellent.
It's hard to get away from.
Yes, nice, very good. All right, what type of still and brand do you use at the distillery?
Another great question, and you know what? I'm kind of surprised at how many times I'm asked that question. We actually have two different stills on site in the distillery. The first one is the one that's less used. It's a 26-gallon hillbilly still out of Kentucky. It's a 4-plate column still. We do any of our brandies or non-whiskey products out of that particular still. Aside from More Woods Whiskaba, we still do that in our other still. But we use that because it's a 4-plate column. It does give us a little bit of a cleaner distillate as we're running it. Whereas the other still that we utilize, 100% for our whiskeys. Our whiskeys don't go through anything else other than our Hoga 100 liter. So it's also a 26-gallon still made by Hoga Company out of Portugal. We actually had it imported directly and have been running that in solid production since January 2014.
Excellent. What was holding you back from becoming a distiller?
Of course, money. That's the big one, right?
Yeah.
Especially early on, I had thought that it was just an unattainable amount of money that would be needed for me personally to get into distilling. If, of course, you take out any concept of home distilling, which in the U.S. is still a no-go. Because of that, money is definitely the first and foremost, and that actually led into the actual belief that it was an unattainable dream. Once I got past that belief and saw that there was possibility that I didn't have to limit myself just because my idea of the money wasn't there, moving past that belief was the biggest step to actually going forward and making it a reality.
And I'm assuming, did you bootstrap the whole distillery?
We did, yeah. Both my business partner, Corey, and I are in 50-50, bootstrap and everything. Growth, I think, will probably demand some investment at that point. But yeah, we've been doing it all our own for the past year and a half now.
Okay. What is the best advice you ever received?
Best advice I ever received was from Ted Pappas of Big Bottom Distilling. Early on, he looked me in the eye and said, "Don't get into this business if you're passionate about whiskey. Get into it because you love paperwork."
Oh.
And I knew it then. I knew it was true. I had no idea how true that was.
Yeah,
it's running a distillery it's all about the paperwork and tracking and of course taxes. After that is the fun part of distilling and sampling even later on, which everyone of course thinks is what you do all day every day. You just sit around the distillery and get drunk, right? Not the case. It's all about the paperwork.
Not the case. Yeah, I'm sure the government wants their taxes, so that's really important, and to keep the doors open as well.
Absolutely.
Can you share one personal habit that contributes to your success?
I can, and it will actually touch on something that you mentioned right at the beginning. I have a really good or bad habit, take it as you will, of being overly responsive. It comes from my day job. I sit at a computer all day for the most part when I'm not at the distillery running the still, of course. Because of that, and because I work for a large tech company, I'm on email. I'm on all of the social channels all day, every day. In fact, my day job, I am a social business program manager. So I am uber connected.
Plugged in.
I am definitely plugged in. So when messages come into me, I actually pride myself on the fact that I can get back to anyone who is reaching out to me generally within about an hour or two.
Yeah, it was really quick response. I remember that.
And I've actually had a lot of people comment within the industry about my responsiveness, and I think that has kind of changed a little bit of the atmosphere in how a lot of us deal with each other. That I get a lot of that appreciation, and it's nice to know that people appreciate the time you take to respond to them. And vice versa. I absolutely appreciate everyone who takes the time to respond to me, even if it doesn't meet my personal goal, right? A day or two. The fact that they're taking the time to respond is huge, because in this industry, you find that it's not always the case.
Yeah, excellent. Can you share inner resource like Evernote that you can share with our listeners?
Yeah. So when we first talked about this interview, I had thought that I was going to talk about Dropbox because it has been a great tool for us between my business partner and I, just to share content, to share information, to share files. But over the past 2 weeks, I just discovered Zoho CRM, which is a tool that Ted's wife from Big Bottom Distilling turned me on to as a way to track or retain your clients. It's a free tool. It's effectively an enterprise level tool that gives you so much capability to track all of the information you need once you've got a product and you're out calling on liquor stores and bars and really dealing with clients in that respect, tracking all of those interactions. It's a great tool. There is a paid version, of course. I believe it's up beyond 10 users. So for small distilleries that need a tool to track those engagements, to just kind of get all of that information into one place and share it with other people. Small distilleries, 10 people or under, it's free. It's kind of a no-brainer for me.
Excellent. We'll definitely link that in the show notes as well. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Can you, what is a book that you can recommend to the Distillery Nation, and why?
Oh, this is going to be a fun one, because there's so many different books out there, and there's so many great resources that I know if I chose a book, someone else in your podcasts previously or in the future would have chosen it as well. And I like to be a little different. So I'm going to recommend Samuel Morwood's book. And you're going to bear with me for a second here on the title, because it is the longest title I have ever seen in anything published. It's called A Philosophic and Statistical History of the Inventions and Customs of Ancient and Modern Nations in the Manufacture and Use of Inebriating Liquors with the Present Practice of Distillation in all its varieties.
Oh my God.
That is a mouthful.
That's really long.
It is written by Samuel Morwood, and it was reprinted through the Forgotten Books Press. This is the book that we've taken Mr. Morwood's recipe for Whiskaba from.
Okay.
And that really is just, I want to say it's less than a page, less than half a page worth of text in what is, I believe, over a 780-page book. It's just an amazingly huge resource for historic discussions of distillation, of liquor, of most alcohols, to be honest. He does talk quite a lot about wine and beer, as you'd expect, but he does get into quite a bit of aquavits and other distillates like that of the time. It's a fascinating read, and once you start to dig into it, I think you definitely understand why we chose the recipe from that book to run with as our historic revival spirit. It's a fascinating read.
Excellent. I'll definitely link that and add it to my queue as well. So thank you for that.
Excellent.
So Jason, before we close out, can you tell us one last piece of parting guidance and the best way to connect with you and the distillery?
Absolutely. I think one of the best bits of guidance I can provide is to talk with people in the industry as much as you can before digging yourself in. Like you said at the beginning, just reaching out to me and asking me about my experience with my hot plate saved you time, heartache, and money. I wish that I was able to find someone similarly when I had
at the time,
because I did my research and I was looking and found that I just had to go with what looked right, because no one else there had done what I was trying to do or had done it and spoken of it on the internet. So really reach out to as many people in the industry as you can, run your ideas by them. I'm not sure about other areas of the country, but I can guarantee you in the Portland area, there's a deep sense of camaraderie here amongst the distillers. Even though we're all in competition with each other at some level, we all want to see each other do well. Our success individually really combines to the success of all of us in the area. So it's been wonderful to be able to reach out to any of them and say, hey, I'm having this problem. How did you fix this? Or what did you do when this happened? Those people that are in the industry that are doing it alongside you are just an invaluable resource to save you time and money.
Totally agree. And then without your advice, I would probably ended up in a totally different path, purchasing that hot plate, and pretty sure I was not going to be happy with it. So
I'm still not happy with it, but we've made the go. Currently, I'm running with half of a hot plate and some internal elements, so it has posed some challenges. But, you punt and you make do.
Yeah, true. What is the best way to connect with you and the distillery?
Absolutely. So you can find the distillery on any of our social channels on Google+, Facebook, and Twitter, of course. We're TV Distilling at all of those places. T is in Tualatin, V is in Valley Distilling. And, of course, through our website at tvdistilling.com. Any of the contact us section will get you there. That'll get email messages to me and my business partner, Corey. And then, of course, accidentalpoet.com. It's phonetic, so it's acdntlpoet.com. That will get you to my personal landing page, which will link you off to LinkedIn and all of my other social channels.
Excellent.
I'm pretty much everywhere under the same moniker. So it's one of the upsides and downsides of working in social business is I'm pretty much everywhere. So
we'll definitely link those as well. And Jason, we would like to thank you for joining us today and all the beautiful advice that you provided today. So thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the invite. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, Elias.
All right, take care.
Cheers.
Hey, Distillery Nation. If you like what you heard today, please visit distillernation.com to view all of today's show notes plus any of the previous ones. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at Greek Distillery. Thank you for listening and have a great day.